What percentage of people who want to have true love will find true love?
I'm told on good authority that it's 100%, but there's a little footnote that says eventually. In other words, in the afterlife, if it doesn't happen here. If you're patient, eventually.
Are you forgetting about Jesus Christ? Doesn't Jesus say there's no marriage in the afterlife?
That's true. He does say things that could be understood that way, but that's actually a different kind of marriage he's talking about.
Okay, everybody, welcome to Swedenborg in Life. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Jonathan Rose, thank you for hanging out. If you're not a member, click the join button, become a member, support this channel. Today's episode is about how true love exists in heaven. And how do you square that with, you could say Jesus' teachings about marriage in the afterlife, but it's just one thing. He just says one thing about it. That seems to indicate that, no, you don't, like, sure, your romantic life is like a huge part of the human existence here, and like, will you find love? Will you keep it together? All this stuff, like families come from that. Yeah. But in heaven, like, who cares? Like, that was, okay, we're done with that thing. Now we do the real thing, which is strange.
Yeah.
So how do you untangle it all? That's where, and we're gonna get the answer like right from the afterlife. We're going to the recorded spiritual experiences of Emanuel Swedenborg, who says, well, I went to heaven. Yeah. And there's like, people have marriage left and right there, more than they do here. It's better than it is here, and it's more central to life than it is here.
I hadn't really thought before about that. That would have been, there were a number of surprises for him when he went to the other side. But that would have been a big surprise to anybody from the Christianity of that time, or even today, that, wait, I thought you said, I thought angels aren't human beings. They aren't the same, and they neither marry nor are given in marriage, So, yeah. And then he goes up there and he finds, just couples all over the place.
So to any of you who maybe you have a spouse that you're like, I want to stay with them, I don't want this to be over, or they already died, and you're like, are we gonna ever be together again? Are they gonna think? The answer is yes, and we're gonna give you the nuances of that. But I feel like we can't do that without chewing through what's going on with what Jesus says.
Okay.
Let's do that first.
Shall we start with that?
And then we'll get to what marriage is like in heaven and how it is descended from like the essence of God, and how he goes to the next level spiritually. So you could skip ahead to those parts if you don't want to hear about this Jesus thing, but you gotta, come on, man. Why would you skip this part of the, don't you want to see the drama unfold? So the one thing Jesus says about it, which is they are neither married nor given in marriage, the context is it's in this like lawyer-esque entrapment scenario where there's many times when they try to entrap Jesus. What are the times? Like when the woman caught in adultery is one. Oh, the coin.
Yes.
The coin.
The coin. Taxes. Should I pay taxes? Just a loaded issue about taxes. Yeah. Should we pay to the Romans? There was so much resentment against the Romans. Here, we'll just throw this. Oh, here, I got a little question for you.
Yeah.
Hey, should we be paying taxes to the Romans? What do you think?
Was it gotcha questions? Is that what they're called now?
Yeah.
So they're trying to get him, they're trying to get a sound bite where he says something that they know they can turn the people against him. They're doing that here. Let me read you this. Yeah. This is from Luke 20:27-36. Some Sadducees, those who say there is no resurrection,
important detail in the story,
came to him and asked him a question. Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, leaving a wife but no children, the man shall marry the widow and raise up children for his brother. Now, there were 7 brothers. This is setting a little scenario up here. Like, what if we took that to its extent or its conclusion? There were 7 brothers. The first married and died childless. Then the second and the third married her, and so in the same way all 7 died childless. Finally, the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had married her. So you're right. I never thought about that detail. These are people trying to trap him in. Look, this whole resurrection thing is ridiculous. There's not that. I don't know what they believe. Like no life after death. I don't know.
Yeah. I never met one, but yeah, I think they.
I would have thought, man. If I call you
You've
up, hey
been
man,
around it.
sorry, it's Saturday, to call you. That's all right. I'm hanging out with the Sadducees. I just feel like they would be learned people.
Yeah, right.
The Sadducees are saying, look, man, this doesn't hold water, this whole resurrection thing. So they're coming at him with that, present this scenario, which is unpleasant for many reasons.
And it's not in private, if memory serves. It's a series of these things in front of everybody. It's in the temple or something, isn't
Yes.
it? It's like
Yes.
a big public setting, so there's a whole audience, and they're obviously playing to the audience as well.
Jesus said to them, "Those who belong to this age marry and are given in marriage. But those who are considered worthy of a place in that age and in the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Indeed, they cannot die anymore, because they are like angels and are children of God, being children of the resurrection." So I'm sorry, as I was reading that, I was like, man, he says a lot more in here than I thought he did, because he gives you several lines of detail, all of which are like a little cryptic.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm going to give you what Swedenborg says about this,
Okay.
and then we can open up the topic of how do you reconcile the different kinds of things that Jesus says and the cryptic nature of what he says. And, like, this is be like, how do people, because there's a lot of different sects and groups of people who have different conclusions based on Jesus. And okay, we'll get into that in a second. But this is what,
And it strikes me that they're communicating to Jesus with an audience of currently existing people in mind.
yeah,
Jesus is communicating with at least two universes for all time. So it's even harder to communicate. What he's doing is the harder of the two communication jobs.
if anyone's not familiar, that would be the spiritual world,
Yes.
which is the afterlife everybody goes to. Sorry, no resurrection Sadducees.
That's right.
So communicating to because Jesus knew this would become part of the word. Jesus knew that this is going to get recorded and sent out to people across the world in this thing that's called the Word, which we've done shows about the nature of the Bible and why it's this tool of connecting heaven and earth. And it does so in part by being true for the afterlife at the same time as being true for those of us here. So he's doing that. He's like, I'm not looking at you dudes, I'm looking past you. I think that's Jay-Z that says that. So he's doing that, but also he's speaking in this symbolic language.
Yeah.
This is what Swedenborg says about... We pulled up this quote because it directly references this passage in Luke. He says in Heaven and Hell 382b, "Marriages in the heavens are not the same as marriages on earth. In the heavens there are spiritual weddings that should not be called weddings but unions of minds, because of the union of the good and the true. On earth, though, there are weddings, because they concern not only the spirit, but the flesh as well. Further, since there are no weddings in the heavens, two spouses there are not called husband and wife. But because of the angelic concept of the union of two minds into one, each spouse is identified by a word that means belonging to each other. This enables us to know what is meant by the Lord's words about marriages in that thing we just read."
Yeah.
So he's saying it's different. It's a different thing.
It's a different, and he launches right in there. Like, I think some people hearing that would say, yeah, marriages in heaven are not the same. Yeah, they don't exist. They'd agree with him in that first sentence. But then he said, well, no, they do exist, but they're different. And it's interesting that the flesh seems to be an important part of it. He used the term weddings instead of marriages, which is interesting. And he says doesn't he say there are no weddings up there?
He says that, but then at the beginning of his book, Marriage, Love, the first chapter is entitled, depending on your translation, "The Joys of Heaven and a Wedding There."
Yeah.
So he's not saying
and you see this whole ceremony. You get to see people go up and they witness the whole ceremony and everything.
So you can't get legalistic about the details. The point he is trying to make is it's different. It's different there. That fundamentally what you're talking about there is a union of minds, which he describes elsewhere as what we would think of as like real love. Like I want to he says eventually, like, I want to think how you think, and I want to feel how you feel, and that we together would grow closer and closer and approach life together. There's this, which is contrasted with, look at this story. It's like, that there's this law that Moses said that says if you guys are married, but then the husband dies and the wife goes to the next brother, and then to the next one and the next one. Like, is there a union of minds happening there? Is this about love? Is this about this is
right?
This is
and
just,
an important detail in this story is that Old Testament, I think it's called the Levirate law. That's where if your brother dies and raised no children, you should try to have children, and then they will be his kids in effect, like you'll take over for him in some way, which Swedenborg says that too has an inner meaning, so how else would you end up in this bizarre situation where 7 brothers marry the same person? So the fact that they're childless every time is a very important, it's like they have to do something absurd to try to get this little premise to work.
According to Swedenborg. So this is a perplexing thing, because people will see this description here where the Sadducees are talking about the law of Moses, which is in the Old Testament, and they'll say, this is not a good way to run a society. How is this from the Lord? It seems like it's cruel and callous. First of all, like, if you're the wife, do you really want to, like, it doesn't seem like you get to choose. Do you really want to, like, I married this guy,
it's gross for
even
her.
if it was for love in the beginning, it's like, how do you know I'm going to love the brother? And if you're with a brother, is it like, I definitely want to do that and raise up? It just seems like a bizarre thing, which, I could get that maybe in the Bronze Age world, if you're trying to maintain a rigid order against the encroachment of armies and this famine and starvation, everything, they were hanging on to life.
And it's reproduction at all costs.
At all costs.
You just got to pop out babies. That's the thing to do.
Maybe it could perform a function back then, but to say that this is God sitting down with his pen and his paper, like, how do we make the perfect human society?
Right.
That seems bizarre. What Swedenborg would say is, look, again, there's layers to what's happening in the Word. Mm-hmm. There was a layer of the Word which was useful for those people at that time. However, was shaped according to their own minds. So there was it's not corruption, but there is an imprint of the kind of mindset those people had on it. However, it contains within it the details of the symbolism of those laws, contain within it spiritual things which are good. And then you have...
And which transcend a given people, a given nation, a given whatever. It's universal. It's across all time.
This is why Swedenborg doesn't sell. It's so, it's cool, but it's not photogenic.
No.
Okay, so it's sad if you, dear viewers, if you take the time to investigate it fully, you will. I don't know if there's any explanation for the existence of and the character of the Bible that is within a million light years of what Swedenborg. That's the only rescue operation I've ever found for how do you square even here. The Sadducees are saying, Jesus Christ, what you're doing is incompatible with the law, which was the what we now call the Old Testament. Okay, so you have all that. Jesus then updating it and saying, no, you've got this new thing, which itself has correspondences in it.
Yes,
it's got correspondences.
His response,
And then only once you learn the language of correspondences, which the only place I've ever found where it's laid out in any detail is in Swedenborg, then it starts to make sense.
And even it's complicated because even what they say, even though what it seems like the Sadducees are trying to do is to entrap him with this rather absurd philosophical example for the sake of debate.
Yes.
Even the presence of that in the text has an inner meaning. There's a meaning of the 7 brothers, or why are there 7 and not 6 or 8 or something? The wife and the childlessness, all that stuff actually has meaning as well, which is cool.
Because unbeknownst to the characters in this, the Sadducees, I don't know, at the time, this really happened, as far as I know. This conversation actually took place.
Right.
But nobody understood except Jesus in that crowd that the function of this moment is going to be, this is going to be written down in this particular way and then distributed en masse to the human race for thousands of years after this, and will shape the character.
Very different cultures and different people all over the planet.
That's enough about that. The point is, if you understand what he's trying to communicate, Jesus there is saying, the thing you're describing here is not what happens in heaven.
Yeah.
It's not, you're not given in marriage like you are here, you're just passed along. Because heaven is about willing, voluntary, loving union. That's across the board. That's how it is with people and God. That's how it is with husband and wife.
Right.
It's not like they're doing here.
Yes, and I think of Swedenborg, he was a nobleman in the 18th century.
Aren't we all?
So there was a lot of arranged marriage. There was a lot of, when you read about the royal families of that time, just all these, it's so political.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to make an alliance with the Holy Roman Empire, or you're trying to get in good with it, these kind of things. And so these complex, it just had nothing to do with the union of minds. Often these are people who had not met each other, Often they didn't like each other. Often they had multiple other sexual partners or what, like it just... Yeah, so when he says, marriage in heaven is different than I guess, it's the union of minds was hardly a consideration in those sort of things. From what I understand, the people of the lower classes did marry for love because they didn't have money, there wasn't kingdoms riding on it or whatever, and so there was more marriage for love at that, lower down the echelon or something. But.
So let's investigate the nature of this marriage in the afterlife and the union of minds and what that's like.
Okay.
So marriage in heaven is completely different from marriage on earth most of the time.
Yeah.
You can sometimes see some people who are kind of doing that thing here, but it's rare.
Yes.
But it's something we can comprehend and imagine. And it's something we're all destined for if we so choose. In the beginning I said... go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think as you were saying earlier, there's also still the longing hasn't gone away. I think people still feel like in all ages, how many movies are about the fact that, she was going to marry the guy who's from the business, but there was someone else who she loved more, and isn't that the whole frame of 1,000 movies?
Yeah, is there any movie that's not about that?
Yeah. It's hard to think of one.
So, here's a report from Swedenborg visiting heaven and observing marriage there.
Okay.
This is Heaven and Hell 366. There are marriages in the heavens just as there are on earth. However, the marriages in the heavens are very different from earthly ones. And then a little bit later in that same book, it often happens that married partners, people who had been married in this world, meet after death and welcome each other joyfully. They stay together as well, but for a longer or shorter time, depending on how happily they had lived together in the world. Ultimately, unless they had been united by real marriage love, which is a union of minds from heavenly love, they separate after having been together for a while.
Yeah, now there's an interesting... I don't know what you want to call it, a wrinkle or something. There's a third element because you've got earthly marriage, you've got heavenly marriage, and then what happens to earthly marriages on the other side? That's what he's getting into here, and it's kind of shocking this thought that he has that they're joyful reunions, like there you are, but it sounds like it fairly often doesn't work out, when they really come into their inner essence. And I think we talked about this in a previous show about people getting kind of boiled down to their essence in those different states after death. And I think that must be part of why he emphasized that it's so different in heaven than it is here. Because here we're not boiled yet. We're complex. You know, we have all these different things going on. We're still trying to figure out, am I good? Am I evil? What do I want?
Yeah.
What are my values and everything? And there you're he uses the term reduced. I don't think in a negative sense, but you've just gotten rid of a lot of baggage and stuff that it's just, well, that's just from my culture, or that's just from my heredity or something like that. And you really find out who you are. Wow. Marriage is a different prospect with a boiled down person, you know, with somebody who they absolutely know who they are. Everybody else knows exactly who they are.
Yeah. You are my boiled down egg.
Yes.
That's what they say to each other.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Well,
it brings a tear to your throat and a lump in your eye. You know?
Already, though, I think we're in a better position than if the Sadducees were right. Well, no. So the Sadducees thought there was no resurrection at all. But if there's somebody who thinks they're neither given, there's no marriage in heaven, like that's the way they interpret that. Let's take Jesus' saying and get legalistic to the letter on it, even though he always speaks in parables. People who say that, they would say you come into heaven and the person that, let's say you spent 60 years with them and you went through all of life together as more than friends, that you would just, like, if you saw each other in the afterlife, you'd be like, oh yeah. Let's praise God. Like that. That's it. Like that all comes to nothing. All the work you put in and all the meaning you created is like, well, you know. So now we're not like that. Now we're like angels. Swedenborg is saying, oh no, like life there is a continuation of life here. So everybody's going to know, oh right, we were married, and you meet. Everyone still is who they are, so you meet up. But when you say that, there's like a couple different responses from people. One of them is, oh yay, and one of them is, oh no. because people might say, this is great. I love being married to the person that I'm married to. This can keep going. That's great. I did not want that to end. Other people might say, I don't, like, oh no, I was married to someone, it was bad. I have to do that forever. Then when you learn from here that no, it's like everything spiritual is about the reality, the internal stuff. You can't, by walking down the aisle and having somebody who's got a certificate from other people that person can be a justice of the peace or a minister and say you're married, that there's nothing binding about that would bind you in the afterlife, because it's really about what's going on in your heart and mind.
Yeah, right.
But then people are worried because people are either like, yes, my loved one's still waiting for me, or they'll say, oh no, I'm in this marriage right now, and I would want us to keep being married on the other side. But what if we get together and we don't?
Yeah.
Click. So
it's an unsettling thought. But I think in a lot of ways, because earthly marriage can be kind of baffling, like you not only don't know what's going on in anybody else's relationship, you don't even know what's going on in your own relationship. And to some extent, it's a nice thought that there would be some light shed on who you are, who this other person is, what the dynamic is, and all that.
But in the end, like, it's very reasonable what he says here, which is that when you go into the afterlife, you get back together and you hang out, and you can start to tell what's the nature of the connection we have here. Yeah, like is right. This? Are we happy together? Do we have this deep connection that can lead to a union of minds? And if so, then that's going to deepen. If not, I think it can often happen is it amicably or amiably? I feel like it's amicably.
Amicably, yeah.
What's amiably? Is that even a word?
Yes.
Told you. So amicably. So I don't know why the reason that I'm dwelling on this is I want to say, don't fear the process. The process is good and just, and it's the opposite of this, what the Sadducees were saying about somebody gets handed to someone else. All that matters is the law and the covenants. Yeah. The only thing that matters is true love. And the true love drives everything in the afterlife.
This is so characteristic of Swedenborg when you really unfold it. where it was something that seemed baffling or infuriating or something like that. And it's not that there aren't teachings that Swedenborg has that people can feel that way about, but when you really open it up and look at it, it makes sense.
Yes.
It's a sensible, loving thing, and it's about reality. I've been thinking in this conversation about just the geography. You know, Swedenborg says the geography of the spiritual world is that people who have similar loves are together, you know, who love similar things, have similar passions, interests, and goals in life, and they're together. You wouldn't even geographically be where somebody was who had a totally different mindset.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what it is. That's what the geography is. So you're going to be with someone who is very close to you spiritually because they're close to you, you know.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know how else to say it.
No, we should have an episode sometime that's like everything that's infuriating about Swedenborg, that or people can suggest things. But
yes, your least favorite passage or something.
why I am uninfuriated about Swedenborg is that I feel like even if it's a glass that may have smudges on it, this is the only one that I feel like I can look through this and start to grasp a very plausible model for who God is and how God has designed the universe.
Yeah.
And that people are upset about, can be upset about religion, and what they will, when they investigate the doctrines and the teachings of churches, what bothers them is the arbitrary nature of it, the injustice of it, that people, which is much like what the Sadducees are trying to do with this teaching to Jesus, which is to say that what we were just going over, this is not fair. This person has to go marry all these people that they don't want to marry. These people have to marry this woman. Do they want to and raise up children for that?
And she has to belong to one of them. Like there wouldn't be an eighth choice or something.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just she's stuck with one of them. She's got to marry one member of that family at least.
So that doesn't make sense. And even the idea that, well, yeah, whatever the church or somebody says, now you're married, and so that's somehow changed the reality when you still got your own heart and mind, and is this really working or something? But what this is saying here is, oh yeah, that's all external stuff, which will not stand up without the actual bonds, which is the bond of love,
yeah,
and the desire to grow closer. Like that's what drives things. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That seems fair and just and desirable, because what is the net outcome of that? Everybody gets to be with who they love.
Yeah.
Like okay. So
yeah, which is sort of a basis of that heavenly society. You know, he often talks about it, that it's kind of the base unit.
We're going to let's talk about what it's like in heaven. Let's talk about this union of minds, because it's going to give us more of a picture of the context in which this happens.
Do you have more passages on the same topic?
I got 1,000 more passages on this. This is from Secrets of Heaven 2732.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I talked to angels about the nature of this mutual reciprocal quality. This is the quality of marriage, union of minds. And here is what they said.
Oh, I like those words, mutual and reciprocal. That's it doesn't sound like, I don't know, command and control or something,
Mutual, reciprocal,
yeah.
Which, by the way, is how the relationship between human beings and God.
Yes.
Or the
very essential characteristics of the partnership with God.
And God didn't have to do it that way.
No.
He's got more resources. Could have had some kind of command and control existence.
Could have done awesome command and control.
Just like got everyone to do everything. Would have been awesome. But chose not to.
Yeah.
Because that must be something reflected on the character of God. Okay.
Chose this messy freedom thing instead.
Blah, thumbs down. And here is what they said. The image and likeness of the one married partner, is in the mind of the other. So they live together not only in the superficial details of life, but also in its inmost depths. The Lord's love and mercy can flow into this oneness with blessings and happiness.
Okay, so that's sort of a platform or something that the blessings and happiness can flow into that situation. It's interesting that almost like you have I don't want to say an avatar, but there's a powerful that it uses that language of Genesis of image and likeness. That there's an image and likeness of the other person inside you.
Yeah.
So even if you were separate or something like that, you're still going to be so helpful in the food store. But
and also,
which one did they want?
Yeah. Hello? No, she didn't pick up. Wow, which one of these do we eat at our house? Interesting that the Lord is barging in here. I thought we were going to talk about, they love each other so much because they love the same music,
Yeah.
It's like you dwell together in these details of life, and suddenly it's like the actual energy for it is God coming into it. But because God can flow into this oneness, it's not even the oneness creates the happiness, but like the oneness is the condition into which the Lord can flow in with blessings and happiness. And I think it's because, so Sweden, I think, well, maybe we'll get to this in a minute. If we don't, what Swedenborg says, why this particular marriage love, where you don't, like you've got your friends and you love your friends and you do stuff with them when you can, but it's, they got to go, and you got your coworkers and you do stuff with them till it's 5 o'clock. And you may even your kids, it's like, you want to do all you can for them, but you try to like go and like, all right, I'm here again. And they're like, okay, Dad, I gotta have some space here. Only with
Dad's here again.
Only with your spouse not only do I love you and wish you well, but I can give my whole self to you. Like let's live together. Let's do everything together. That's how that is the full expression of the love that you feel for everyone. But it can go all the way. So in that state of almost like my life is not even really about myself. It's about how do I take what I have and give it to this person, or I'm concentrating on that. Then you kind of have the same attitude that God has toward everyone. Because God is in that state toward you, meaning like Jonathan Rose, what I want to do, the point of my life in a way, if I'm God, is give Jonathan Rose everything I can possibly give him. And he thinks the same thing about everyone. So when we have a state of life that's like, well, my life is about how do I make myself happy, that's not the way that God is. God can't really, you don't have enough in common with God to really accept the happiness that God is offering. But when you say, I have this person who, like, when I'm thinking about what I can do with my life, I'm thinking about how can I have things really work out well for them, then you're compatible enough that you can start to feel, you speak the same language as God, and God can like give you all this happiness.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Secrets of Heaven 10,168.
Okay.
We
really
just
going
make
to the back
numbers
of the book.
up. No book has that many sections in it. True marriage love is a union of two minds into one. This is spiritual union, and all spiritual union descends from heaven. So true marriage love comes from heaven, and its core essence starts with the Swedenborg special, the marriage of goodness and truth there.
Okay.
The marriage of goodness and truth. So actually, it might even say a little bit about what it means. I don't even know what the marriage of goodness and truth is. The marriage of goodness and truth in heaven is from the Lord. That is why the Lord is called the bridegroom and husband in the Word, and why heaven and the church are called the bride and wife. For the same reason, heaven is compared to a marriage.
So you really do, in the Bible, have this imagery where it's that a similar relationship. And I know this idea has been around forever of like married to the Lord or some kind of idea like that. So it's interesting to think about how that maps onto couplehood.
It goes on. This makes it clear that true marriage love is the union of two into one in their inner depths, which are depths of thought and will, and therefore depths of truth and goodness. After all, when people are in true married love, they each love what the other thinks and what the other wills. They also love to think as the other thinks and to will as the other wills. As a result, they love to unite with the other and become essentially one person. This is the meaning of the Lord's words in Matthew, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. And that's just, there's a reference to Genesis in there as well.
Yeah, I think that's very mystical because it keeps talking about two, but also one. The two become one. And then that biblical phrase is they're no longer even two. They're one. And yet what is that experience like to be that close to someone else that in effect you've formed one sort of mastermind? I don't know what to call it. It's like it should have a different word, but it's made out of two people, but it becomes one kind of organism of desire, of intention, passion, values, thoughts. And I was very struck by the phrase in there too that they love to unite. It's not, do we,
we got to unite.
Do I have to?
I was trying to watch football.
To this person?
I was trying to watch football. You're trying to unite. But this is a theme that is echoed across everything. Like God is this in himself. He's somehow the marriage of love and wisdom.
Yes,
this is how. So there's this uniting, but it's not uniting like. It's not uniting. There's two that then become one indistinguishable thing.
Right.
There's a distinguishably united in function. And the thing that is, if you don't understand what that means, the analogy or correspondence that he most often gives to what this union is like, whether it's the union of goodness and truth or the union of husband and wife, is the heart and the lungs.
Yes.
It's like the heart and the lungs. So the heart and the lungs, if you have a surgeon who has to, goodness forbid, open you up, and he's like, which one's the heart and which one's the lungs? In here, they're so similar. You're in trouble. I don't know if you can ask for a transfer or something.
They are two enormously different organs.
However,
their relationship with the air is, lungs are like, bring it on. And the heart is like, if there's even a tiny bit of that in there, I'm going to get a clot or something.
And lungs, no fluid in them.
No fluid.
Not, if you take a little down the wrong
fluid all day long, all the time.
However, so yes, you're different. You be yourself, but yet they're totally united in that you can't technically say here's where one starts and the other one ends because they're connected by these blood vessels. Yeah. They are essential to each other's function. Like the heart,
essential.
The heart is the thing that's got to pump the blood, and that's what makes life for the whole body. However, if the lungs don't oxygenate that blood, the heart is pumping poison out to the whole body. And the lungs, they draw in oxygen, but if they don't have a supply of blood themselves, they'll cease to function.
Right. So you're not going to run into somebody, you have a doctor's appointment or something, the doctor says, well, your heart's functioning well, but your lungs appear to have shut down many, many years ago. Yeah.
Well, we're going to have to do a lung removal, but it's fine. Your heart's still there.
But your heart's
so you'll
in
be
really
fine.
good shape, surprisingly good.
That distinct yet united is the way that it works everywhere with everything. So same thing with the Lord. When a human being grows closer and closer to God, and that is what we're supposed to do to eternity, because you become happier and happier, and that's what the Lord is trying to do with everything in life. You don't become indistinct from each other, even though you realize more and more, just like let's use the heart and lungs analogy, like, oh, I'm so connected to the Lord, it's his life that's in me. However, you don't matter how high you go in heaven, you continue to feel more and more like yourself. You feel like you're a distinct individual, and that is part of the bond. Same thing with the different parts of heaven, that Swedenborg says that there's a total unity in heaven, in that everyone is there for each other. However, it's very differentiated, that there's different communities that are very different from each other, but yet they're united by a function. And he says, look at the human body. It's not like the human body is the ultimate example of oneness. But if you go in there, it's not just like, oh yeah, it's just human body mush. Everywhere you look, you couldn't even tell which part you're looking at because it's so one. There's all these little membranes and there's lines and don't put this there. but they're so united because they have a goal together, and everything contributes to that goal.
And yeah, don't we have human beings have an innate fear of blobbiness, or like, you know, the idea that you're just, oh, I'm going to join some organization and then I will completely lose myself. I will just,
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like there'll be no difference, no daylight between me and anybody else.
Nobody comes out the other side of that like, oh, it was so great, I lost myself. No, they're always like, I lost my identity in there. They brainwashed me into something.
Yeah, right. I didn't even know who I was anymore.
Yeah.
Or something like that. I love the way Swedenborg describes it, and the human body is such a useful analogy for all this. It's so great, because what an amazing system where the organs are completely different. They have completely different expectations, needs, products that they put out into the body, and everything.
Locations.
Completely different. Animals, I'm fascinated. This is sort of, getting into medical stuff, but isn't it fascinating that they can actually tell, like if they find a tumor on you, they can tell whether that actually started there or it started in a different organ, because every organ has its own sort of brand.
Yeah.
It's wild. The systems are so different.
Yeah.
And yet they're all pulling together most of the time, just kind of seamlessly working together in thousands of ways that we're not even conscious of. But like, wow, that was lucky. You know, everything's working together. And I love that idea of the individuality. And we talked before, I think, about the levels of heaven in some episode. I think where when you go up, you can't even see people. When you go down, you lose your wisdom. It's like, there's very distinct membranes around heavens. So there's layers in the heavens. And then Swedenborg says in each community of heaven, there's an east and a south and north and west. There's an inside level. There's an outside level. That, it's very, very stratified and detailed.
Yeah.
And yet there's a oneness of purpose. And I think there's a delight in being part of, a cog in the machine, but unlike any other piece of the machinery.
Yeah, that's right. Moving on. This is Heaven and Hell 369. There is a sharing of thoughts and affections in the heavens. There is all the more sharing between a wife and a husband because they love each other. We may gather from this what the union of minds is that makes a marriage and gives birth to marriage love in the heavens. It is that each wants his or her blessings to belong to the other, and that this is mutual.
Yeah, so that's a selfless, as you were saying before. It's not that I want the thing that you've got, or this is going to complete me or make me feel good or something like that. It's that I'm getting blessings. I really want you to have that.
That's a wrinkle in, or a left turn or something in our understanding of the nature of happiness that Swedenborg outlines. Because I think the default setting is happiness is getting what you want, the things you want most.
Yeah.
You get those.
That's right.
And you are happy. But that's actually the happiness of hell. It's not the happiness of heaven. The happiness of heaven is different, because Swedenborg says elsewhere that an angel, which is just a person in the state of, who's reached the state of heaven.
That's right.
They are not happy with whatever blessing they have. So I don't know what that would be, whether it's you live in a great place, or you have some great wisdom, or they are not happy with those things. Those things alone do not make them happy. The happiness they get from them is the sharing of them with someone. So the essence of the fundamental unit of that happiness is, I have this cool thing. Look at it. Now I can give it to someone, and I understand the happiness that's giving them. Now I'm having fun. And that's not just happenstance. The reason that's the way happiness works in heaven is that is how God experiences happiness. I think the quote that he gives is, this derives its essence from the Lord, whose love is like this. That's what happiness actually is the joy of giving something. And so that's how it plays. That's what heaven is.
Like recognizing, getting to know people well enough to know that, oh, so-and-so's always felt a little kind of low self-esteem about this or that or the other thing, and I would want them to have this satisfaction. I want them to know how much of an impact they've had, or you know, like seeing that some quality, like, oh, this would light them up. They would love this, you know.
Okay.
And just sharing like that. Because you think about the Lord as this sun that's just like radiating and ridiculous energy all the time, just throughout the whole universe, and spiritual and physical.
You think about that would seem to account for why, if you were trying to make everyone happy, wouldn't you just make everyone good at everything? If you were God and you had a blank slate and you were trying to, I know, like growing up, there was things I didn't feel like I was good at. Why don't you just make everybody is smart, everybody is confident, everyone is really socially adept, everyone is good at sports, everyone is good looking, everyone
all drive well.
Everyone is creative. Then it's a bunch of happy people. But instead, here we are, and there's some of us that really struggle with things that I think, and this like if you think of, okay, if you're in high school in heaven, it's like, oh, I'm popular, and what I can do with that is I can notice somebody who has trouble making friends, and I can be like, come sit at my table with me, and there you can give them this gift that suddenly your popularity has meaning to it. Yeah. Because you can just sit there and like, but it'll decay and it doesn't do anything and it's hollow. But to say, look what and you know that makes them feel so cool. And let's say you're really smart and that you're like top of your class, but you know, oh, here's this person who really struggles and I can help them. And then how they're going to feel once I think that's why we are like we are. That better than everybody's good at everything is everybody uses their strengths to help the weaknesses of others. Then you have happiness. Then that's just like, you think of like the heart doesn't need skin because the skin is the skin for the heart. The
skin's doing the skin for the heart.
The heart, the intestines, or no, I guess you'd have to be like, lungs don't need their own ribs because the rib cage is the ribs for them.
They're doing the ribs for them. That's right, because lungs in and of themselves, I think, are quite mushy little.
No offense.
I mean, they have to expand and contract everything, but they don't have that structure that the ribs supply. And I'm just thinking this silly little moment from Monty Python, I think it is. Did you ever see that sketch about Bicycle Repairman?
I don't know.
That there's a world of superheroes, and everybody's a superhero. And they all have all these equal superhero skills, except that the one thing that they don't know how to do is repair their bicycles. And they all revere Bicycle Repairman because he's got the skill that none of them have. But it's like that.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Hey, if you're enjoying this show, right after we're done recording these shows, we sit down and record the deep content. If this is a deep dive that we're doing, after that's done, we sit there and really give our thoughts on what did we say that we didn't get a chance to say, or what's a point we wanted to expand on that we didn't. So if you click that little join button, for a very small fee that goes directly to supporting our not-for-profit operations, we give you this extra behind-the-scenes look at what's on our mind, what impacted us most about the content, and hopefully give you some practical, cool stuff to use in your life. So if you want extra content and you want to support us at the same time, click the join button and let's go. Moving on, let's answer a question that nobody asked.
Okay, great.
Which is, what's the source of eternal marriage love?
Wow.
That nobody asked that, but things have sources. And the answer is, I think, well, interesting may be a strong word, but important.
Yeah.
So this is it.
You gotta love Swedenborg. I mean, he thinks about things that it never occurred to me to think about. A thing like that. The source, that's amazing.
You have water in your house. You can wash your hands and brush your teeth. It's got a source. Like, you don't have to ever know that, but do you know that they dammed a river somewhere up there and there's a reservoir, and so then it goes through this treatment plant, and then there's a source to it. Yeah. And also, though, it answers some of the why. I think what some people are irritated again about religion and the picture that it paints of reality is that, again, physically, everything's got a reason. If there's running water in your house, you can go see where it comes from and how it is and why it is. Not just there because it's baked into just God said, okay, this is...
Yeah, it's not arbitrary. Right?
There's a sequence. There's a sequence why we talked about that there is marriage in heaven, and we talked about that it is a certain way. Well, why? Can't we work? Can we do a little, like, go back up the supply chain a little bit? So this is from Heaven and Hell 370. Divine truth and divine good, the source of all intelligence, wisdom, and happiness, flow primarily into marriage love.
Primarily.
What is that? What do you mean primarily?
Yeah, and I think what he may mean is first. Like there's so often descending, as you say, flowing. It goes from here to the treatment plant or something. The first place it goes is into this.
Okay. So
and first also means primarily in the usual sense, but
yeah,
I don't know. That's just what struck me.
So if it's the reservoir.
Yes.
If that's where
right.
To get
and then
to your
a lot
tap,
of the homes are being fed, from that.
This means that marriage love is the essential matrix for the divine inflow, because it is itself a marriage of the true and the good. So the true and the good are the two aspects of God, and somehow those parts of God are the place from which intelligence, wisdom, happiness, that's the only known factory of those things.
Yes, right. And so to really receive those things or get as close to the source as you can, you need to be in a situation that resembles that.
So it's like the Amazon fulfillment center. It's like all the factories that make all the things, like all the different things you can buy, that's like the infinite things in the divine.
Yes.
For the divine to give them to you, the first place they all go is these big giant warehouses.
They get aggregated.
Marriage love is the warehouse. The actual nature of angels depends on how what is true in them is united to what is good, and what is good is united to what is true. In other words, the nature of angels depends on the way their love is united to their faith, and their faith to their love.
Yeah, so this is not easy to process, and I wouldn't try to hazard a guess of exactly what all is meant by that.
Everybody stopped watching, so we can just talk freely.
Okay, great.
Everybody has clicked. They had
that's a really,
they're like, I can't believe I'm still watching this.
Yes.
Okay, now I'm out of here. Like they're just mocking me now.
Right.
They think this is entertainment. Yeah.
But it has something to do with the phrase that came to mind that people use is talking the talk and walking the walk. That's one expression.
Yep. That
people say. And I think it's a great expression because
rhymes.
It's sort of like it rhymes, which is fantastic.
It's hard to find those.
And yeah. What are the odds that those two things would rhyme? And and part of how people use that expression is that, you can talk a good game.
Yeah.
But are you doing the thing that you said? And so that's somehow the difference between your philosophy, your mindset or something, and your actions and what you're doing. I'm still not getting all that close to it, but I think when he talks about these marriages of these abstractions, it has to do with those kind of things, because the way we live as human beings most of the time is that there's a vast chasm between, let's say, there's a chasm that I imagine a lot of people are familiar with, between what you desire, what you wish were the case, what you wish was the case about yourself, what you wish was the case in your life or something like that, and the knowledge base that would be required to get there.
Yeah.
Like children are very familiar with this state, because it's like, I want to build a fort. I want to build it in the tree, and I want, and it'll have a ladder, and you can get on the bottom, you shoot up to the top, and great. But you lack the knowledge base to make all that happen. You've got one in spades, but the other is not very full yet. And we can have the other way around, where you have a whole head full of, oh, sure, I know, I know what's needed. I just have no desire to put that into act, Or I don't want to get into all that,
Yeah. Or I have the blueprint for how to live a virtuous life, but my base instincts always overwhelm that, and I don't actually do it. I think this is another thing.
Any shiny object is like, I'm
yeah. Cool, This is another thing that people don't like about religion, is people will go around with high-minded sounding things on their lips about love your neighbor as yourself and all these, but they don't really act like that. And it's the same thing. I think that in the United States and everywhere, there's like culture wars, and what people generally do is they are furious about the hypocrisy of the other side. You say this, but look, this is what you do. You don't even live up to your own ideals.
Which is interesting, because there's a deep-seated sense that those things should align.
Yeah.
And they don't in you. Right? But the other people on the other side say, yes, and they don't in you either, but they wouldn't say yes to that. They're just thinking, you're the real hypocrite because you're not even doing this. You say that, you say this is so valuable, and then look at the hatefulness or whatever it is.
Even laws. You think of like a law as a pronouncement by a society that you shouldn't steal. You shouldn't steal. And I think everybody will pay lip service to, especially if they were like on camera and in front of a crowd. Of course, you shouldn't take what isn't rightfully yours.
Yeah.
But then there's so much stealing that the human race does of all kinds. There's like your standard stealing. There's like sort of white collar stealing. There's like people rigging the system so that they can get more than there's all the stealing. There's so much stealing. Not having the love and the truth come together. Like, even if there can be situations where even people don't have even laws on the books, but generally it's like, we know how we should act. We don't really act that way, and the chaos and death that comes out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the idea that these two things can be in alignment and sort of humming along, and what a great thing happens. And Swedenborg talks about, he even kind of personifies them, that truth loves love and love loves truth. Even that hardly grammatically makes sense. But how does truth have this love? It's not love. Love is love.
Yeah.
But it still says that they're drawn to each other and they want to be together by the divine nature that flows down into everybody. And so when you're in that condition, the divine has access to you.
Yeah.
In a different, like you get a more satisfying experience of divine inflow.
Moving on. The reason, this is from Heaven and Hell 371, the reason the divine nature that emanates from the Lord flows primarily into marriage love, reservoir / fulfillment center that we were talking about, is that marriage love flows down from the union of the good and the true. The union of the good and the true finds its origin in the Lord's divine love for everyone in the heavens and on earth. So we're not just like its origin in the Lord, who's this ineffable, infinite being. It finds its origin in the Lord's love for everyone in heaven and on earth. So the philosophical terms, the truth and the goodness, it's like maybe you could get it, but it's not beautiful and it's not touching. However, to see the love for each person, that you make a Hallmark movie about. That's right. Is that thing is beautiful and it's noble and everything. If you could see it up close, you'd say, "Oh, that's where this comes from. That's awesome."
And frankly, pretty amazing, because it's easy to think of lovable people when you think of that, but it also applies to unlovable, people that we may consider.
Yeah. No, we both qualify for that love from the Lord, no matter what.
It's amazing.
It's a good deal. It's a good deal. It's like a trust fund.
And from that, which was really the whole driver behind Jesus coming into this world, everything that happened, that whole glorification, the whole motivation was this love for the entire human race, desire to save the entire human race. So that's a driver of a lot of reality.
Divine good emanates from this divine love, and divine good is accepted by angels and by us in divine truths. To the extent that true elements are united to what is good within us, then we are united to the Lord and heaven. This is the actual source of marriage love, which means that it is the actual matrix for the inflow of the divine. Okay, come on.
Okay, that's easy.
Okay,
Right.
okay, come on. What's it talking about? I think I now understood a piece of it, which is so I understand the love of the Lord emanating out to everyone. That the Lord,
Right.
this is, of course, like the Lord can look down at our little lives and see which is just an appearance. The Lord is right there inside each of us, but can see the state that we're in, knows and understands the different kinds of pain we have and the hopes and ambitions and the state of our experience, also the state of our potential, what's harming us, what's hurting us, where we could go to be. So can see all that and loves you. Like, I just want you to, I want to fix your life up in a million ways. I want to give you things that are going to make you happy. I want to lead you or urge you to fulfill the destiny of who you could be. I want you in a happy life. All that stuff, that's in the Lord, but it can't come into you and help you except through divine truth. So,
right.
but that you learn, I have to love my neighbor as myself. Whatever your divine truth is, that's the only way that love can get access to your heart.
Right, and I think of divine truth in two different ways. In a way, one is sort of the divine perspective on reality, what everything is, and particularly who God is and things like, what are we doing here, and things like that. But I think truth also, often the way Swedenborg uses it, equates to what I would call marching orders. In other words, they're life instructions. It's not just, there is air, it is this temperature or something, but it's also, hey, if you want your life to be better, try this, do it in this order. Here, it's a game plan,
Yes.
of how to move forward and how to get past, like to dial down the hell in yourself.
Yeah.
How to escape these things that want to hook us.
So the love is the feeling, the desire, the intention, and then the truth is whatever form that takes in order for the intention to express itself. So think if you had like a little child who had gotten lost, and you could see and tell that they were sad and scared, and it's your kid, right? And they're doing that, and you can somehow see them for like a few moments before you can go and help them. You run up to. So in the moment before you can help them, you just have your intention, which is I want to comfort this child, and I want to address any whatever I need to do to make them better. So that's the love. It's like this overwhelming, like, I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
Then when you get there, the truth is like, I'm going to pick you up. I'm going to put my hand on your head. I'm going to tell you things like, it's okay, I'm here. Do you need, do you have anything that needs to get, all those actions.
Be careful if there's an injury,
Yes.
like checkouts, because you want to just embrace them or something like that.
Yeah.
But maybe that's, their arm is broken or whatever it is.
Yeah, but if you're just doing all those actions, but you're only doing it because if I do this, somehow I get this inheritance that they had. If you don't have the love in there, then those truths by themselves, the actions you would take to comfort them, they aren't really good at all. But it's the connection of those two.
Right.
That's where heaven comes in.
So I think you solved it.
No. But we did talk about it.
Yes, that's true.
We said some words about it. Okay.
And words are enough. And another thought that I had while you're saying that was that this may be overly simplistic, but Swedenborg is often, as he says, he's for something, he's also against something else. And part of what he's against is this idea of faith alone, because it's so widespread, and it was so much of in the church that he grew up in, not in the part of his father, but it was in the air a lot. That You're saved by faith alone. It's still around in Christianity in various different forms, and the idea that you can just think your way, like you can just have one pole. You don't need both. You don't have to treat people well. You don't have to do actions of love. You don't have to rescue people to the best of your ability or anything like that. Just have the thought. It's enough to just know those things. You'll be saved by your belief, so you'll be fine. Doesn't matter what happens to anybody else.
Yeah,
those kind of things.
That you're not taking on the challenge of looking at yourself, which you alluded to, and saying, oh, it turns out I am a total jerk to people in these ways. And I all the time am doing things that are harming those people, and I'm acting, and I have to confront myself about that and do that. That's the essence of, pretty much the essence of religion, is to be willing to do an honest inventory of yourself.
And it really doesn't hurt in relationships either if you become more and more of that sort of person, because a lot of people realize about their spouses that there's somebody who, says this. I run into this a lot in myself, that, talk a good game, or I say, I'm flexible. And then I'm absolutely stubborn, or whatever it is.
I'm flexible. No, not like that. No, this is how we do it.
No.
So that's how it is in everything. That's the uniting. Like when you say faith alone, that was what killed Christianity. Was that you had all these things floating around, like you had the Bible and you had the idea of Jesus, but it was so far divorced from that work, which is to honestly get your love of dominion, what Swedenborg would call the devil, the thing in you that makes you favor yourself over other people. Pursue whatever gives you pleasure, regardless of the consequences for other people.
That's right.
To stand up to that, and because nobody else can do it for you, to stand up to that and say, I'm going to take an honest inventory of myself and not over criticize myself, but to just really pick out where do I threaten the well-being of the human race, and to tackle that and make that work. To when you divorce, with the intent that I would want to serve the whole human race, just as the Lord does. That my intent is to eventually get to the place where I'm like a little version of the Lord, which is what I long for most, is to help bring happiness to everyone. To divorce that from religion is like you completely missed the point.
And part of what I'm hearing in all these passages is that love flows in. Like we have this sense that, that's just me. That's how I feel. I love this person. I love this activity, whatever it is. But that actually flows in. And therefore, you can get better at it. Like by knowing certain principles, taking certain actions in your life, you can get better. You can become more loving. You can become more compassionate. You can become more angelic, or even radiating something, as the angels do, of that divine quality of love. I think of the angels who welcome people to the other world. This is beautiful, the acceptance and love, and we want to help you in any possible way. We're not just stuck with, if we feel like we're cold-hearted, well, you're not stuck with that. But it's something you receive, and you have to get yourself ready. It's not, you don't generate. You don't, I'm not generating it hard enough.
Well, that explains the mercurial nature of love. You're around people that you're close to, and you love them. You know that you love them really deeply, and sometimes you only know that because as soon as there's any indication that somebody might be hurt or sick or something, or in danger, then it's just like
full of that love,
or it'll just hit you sometime when you're around them. But day to day, we're just kind of like in our little dude, and
or you're loving one moment, and then you go, well, no, I didn't leave it there. And you're snapping.
Yeah. So it's pretty obvious that
of course I didn't.
You don't control the dial for that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's strange on its own. How
Very
would this
strange.
thing? But when you have,
because nothing feels more like yourself than your love.
Yeah.
That's who you are.
But this Swedenborg stuff, I understand now. It's because this is just like the water reservoir metaphor. It seems like, I turn on this tap this tap that's right in my house here makes water.
Look at that.
It just
What
it
an
just
amazing
makes
object.
something in the tube here just makes water.
You twist it and it makes more.
Yeah.
You twist it and it makes less, and then none.
But it sure doesn't. It just it lets water flow in, and if something happens upstream to block that, or there's a drought or something, then it wouldn't come. So it is with love. So it is with love. Is that what you're trying to do is clean out the pipes, make sure that the things are open so that love can come in. And
kind of the code for that in Swedenborg land is getting your truth and your goodness together.
Yes, there we go.
Getting those two things together.
That's what it is. So the union of minds in marriage in heaven is, let's get our pipes right for divine love to flow. Divine love is sitting there like wanting to come in. You just gotta now we're connected up to the water main, and now I can come in.
Yeah, because the other place, there's always love, and it all originates from God. But the other place that it comes from, as you were saying before, is a self-centeredness, desire to control, wanting to manipulate other people to get your needs met, not caring about them, or being cold-hearted or pathological or whatever.
Yes, we're about to. I'll hold off because I think we're going to read a number about that in a second. But I want to do one more in this section. There's a lot that are awesome that you guys can get this book for free, Heaven and Hell, that we're talking through here.
That's right.
You can just get it, download it from Swedenborg.com if you want to know more, or if you want to support us, buy a nice looking hardcover version of it.
I think it's one of the biggest chapters, and it's right in the middle of the book. This chapter on marriage, it's one of the biggest ones, I think.
But this is from 372 in Heaven and Hell. When the good and the true are united in an angel or in any one of us, they are not two entities, but one. Since the good then flows into the true, and the true from the good. So this is something that happens inside yourself. This union is like the one that occurs when we think what we intend and intend what we think, also known as integrity.
Good point.
Then our thought and our intention form a unity. The thought forms or presents in a form what our volition intends, and our volition gives it its appeal. This is also why two spouses in heaven are not called two angels, but one.
One angel.
So just like, again, this is a repeating pattern. The marriage thing is not just coming out of nowhere. It's saying within each one of us, you have your feelings and your thoughts. And what's really awesome is when those two things are in integrity with each other. And everybody knows that. There's nobody in the world that wouldn't rather be around someone who you can trust what they say, or they're not being sneaky or duplicitous, or that they have this integrity, or they everybody knows that's cool. And I guess it depends on, you have to have a good will. If you have a good will and your thoughts go with it, then that's awesome. And then it's saying the union of minds in this heavenly version of marriage, it's like that. It's like you have two people who are in integrity with each other, and that's good.
I'm thinking of it seems to me that in almost every profession or line of work or pursuit, excellence is a result of exactly what you're talking about there. In other words, I'm picturing, for some reason, an emergency room physician, somebody who has this desire to help people. That's why they went through medical school and all that kind of stuff. But then they've learned more and more and more. And as they're on the job, they're constantly learning how to help somebody in this situation. Don't bother saying, say this, or go for that, or grab this, or they learn more and more. So their excellence is the embodiment of those two things. Yeah. That's how you achieve that. And so how does that relate to marriage? That's just in one individual. But in two people in the spiritual world, in some amazing way, get to embody that, like play that out, embody that in some way, being some kind of excellence of this, the heart and the mind working together. Other than that, I have no idea what he's talking about.
Let's move on to what you can tell something sometimes about, other than that, I have no idea what he's talking about. You can tell the nature of something by understanding what is a threat to it.
Oh, good.
What destroys it, what the opposite of it is.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to go into two. He has a lot to say about what destroys marriage love. But these are, I think, the two big ones here. Okay. This is from Heaven and Hell 374. He says, the pleasure of adultery is essentially nothing but the pleasure of a love of the union of what is false and what is evil. Kind of the counterpart to the goodness and truth.
Yeah, right.
This is a hellish pleasure because it is diametrically opposed to the pleasure of heaven, which is a pleasure of a love of what is true, united to the good.
Interesting. And he talks a lot about this origin of adultery in this idea of evil and falsity. And I think people just think, well, no, it makes me feel alive, or it's exciting or something.
Yeah.
But he's got such a different origin story for what's going on in there. And somewhere he defines it as it's beyond just like an accident or a fling or something like that. Like the thing that he's really talking about with adultery is deliberate, like you did it in order to wreck either your own relationship or somebody else's relationship or something. It's the direct opposition to marriage that's the fundamental thing that these almost the willful, almost kind of a glee and like, I'm going to destroy, just blow the place up. Kind of thing.
if we've been figuring out is what is marriage, it is in the spiritual sense. It's like the union of these two minds into one. And we talked about the details of how that is. So what he'll say is the thing that is most disruptive to that happening is cheating on each other. Because how do you ever come back to like, we're in this total union together?
Right.
Like there's plenty of things that can mess that up, but that one is the most destructive. And he says that the more you get into the pleasure of the opposite, like, I love adultery in all its different forms, that pleasure eclipses and destroys the pleasure of, it's just us. We're just one person. Yeah.
And you can see images in movies or whatever, where you're bored of your spouse at home and you're really excited about this other thing that's going on and whatever, that is just destructive. Yeah.
Yeah. Then the other one, so that this will.
What else could there be?
If that's threat 1A, this is threat 1B, and it's of a very different nature. So Heaven and Hell 380, any love of control of one over the other utterly destroys marriage love and its heavenly pleasure. For as already noted, marriage love and its pleasure consist of the intent of one belonging to the other, and of this being mutual and reciprocal.
There's those words again.
Yeah. So he goes on, a love of being in control in a marriage destroys this because the dominant partner simply wants his or her will to be in the other and does not want to accept any element of the will of the other in return.
That's right.
So it is not mutual, which means that there is no sharing of any love and its pleasure with the other, and no accepting in return. Yet this sharing and the union that follows from it is the very inward pleasure that is called blessedness in marriage.
It's an astounding idea that you'd have two individuals with free will being, in some sense, equal. I mean, that's the word that comes to mind. In other words, it's not command and control. It's not sort of my will, my way or the highway kind of thing. It's I have an idea, you have an idea, we work together, we build a plan, and here's where we're going with our life. And respecting and appreciating each one's gifts and what they contribute to the situation, rather than the sort of tied up, like it's absurd, but it even goes to that level of somebody literally tied up in the basement or something, you know what I mean? It's just a slavery type of situation.
So what this is saying is that, the essence of the love is you want to share everything. And you can have it completely destroyed, even if there's like we're married to each other. If you were to look around and say, how's marriage doing in this society? Well, look, 95% of all people are married.
Yeah.
It's great, you did it. Swedenborg is saying you can have that covering on it, but if inside that thing, somebody is just pushing the other person around and they're just getting what they want, and it's miserable for the other person, and the person who's doing the pushing around is not experiencing marriage joy, but the joy of dominance, which is actually hell itself.
And they're enslaved by that. So they're both enslaved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is like what Jesus said. They're neither married nor given in marriage in heaven. This thing, you can have plenty of people who are externally, they're married. But it may be the exact opposite. He actually calls the love of a relationship where one person is dominating the other, he calls that the hellish marriage. And that's as directly opposed to marriage as is adultery or anything like that. So,
and I think it's well known in the world that marriage can be a little hell. It can be a little heaven. It can be a little hell. That it has both those capabilities.
This is part of why people, when you say like, oh, marriage, yeah, it's great. This is from God. You got to do it. Yeah. There's many things people will point to, but this is one of them. Like, it can be an entrapping, miserable situation in any number of ways. But to understand that what you're talking about there, that's not marriage. Just like the seven brothers and the past.
Right.
That's not marriage.
That's not marriage. No, that's not what you're
marriage
talking about.
It's very clear. This is a union of minds where you wish to think. The essence of it is that you care about how the other person is feeling, you care about what they want, you care about what they think, and you intend good to them. And because you do that, and they do that to you at the same time, you naturally come to be more and more compatible and on the same page about things.
I do think that's what a lot of people would like they would long for that or strive for that.
And who also does not do any dominating is God to human beings.
And if anybody could do it,
what would be easier for God than to just nope, this is my house, this is what happens.
Got all the weapons, got all the ability to totally dominate us.
And yet will not, to the point, if we're talking about Jesus was like, nope, you guys, when I come here, you can kill me on the cross, you can hit me and do all that stuff. I'm not gonna dominate the human race. That was even the nature of according to Swedenborg.
Even if you're killing me, I'm not going to control you. I'm not going to.
Yeah, the nature of the temptation where the devil says to Jesus, "Turn these stones into bread."
Right.
It's a strange little episode, which is Jesus. If anyone's not familiar, there's a point in the Gospels where Jesus and the devil he's out in the wilderness and the devil is tempting him.
Fasting for 40 days.
And you think, oh, this is this clash between Jesus and the devil. What's the devil going to do? Well, he's probably going to tell Jesus to, commit atrocious crimes, and Jesus is going to, or they're going to battle with swords and things. This is how it plays out. One of the things he says is, turn these stones into bread. That's what he said. And Jesus says, no, he quotes scripture at him and says, no, you shall not live by bread alone.
Yeah,
what was that?
Temptation
like
is that?
What's so bad about the devil? Wouldn't that actually be better? There's, at the time especially, there's enough stones.
And he's hungry. He's been fasting for 40 days.
So it doesn't make any sense. Again, if what the premise is of this show is that we're saying there's a correspondential nature of what Jesus says. That's the only way to understand the scriptures. Yeah. And that the only place I've found with a really good accounting of that is Swedenborg. That without correspondences, that exchange doesn't make any sense. However, if you look at the internal sense, that is about forcing people. Turn these stones into bread. Oh. Unless I'm grievously mistaken, which does happen quite often, Swedenborg explains that as you're turning people, you see the state of the human race, just force them to do what you want.
Make them love, or turn their truth into love.
Because the bread is a symbol. Bread is a symbol of goodness. So he won't do that. So similarly, as soon as you start to do that, it's kind of like the story of the debts. Like if Jesus, the landlord or whatever repays this huge debt to someone, and then that person doesn't repay their debt or doesn't forgive the debt, the landlord forgave the debt, the person doesn't forgive the debt.
They're
And
just nasty about it.
so if God is sitting here and despite, everything that he has over you, he's not dominating you. He's not forcing you. He's in partnership with the life of you. You go around and dominate your spouse. How are you and God going to have anything in common?
Yeah.
How are you going to have anything in common? Of course, that's going to destroy marriage love.
Mm.
An important component of heavenly marriage, according to Swedenborg, or two things that are, I don't know if these are the same thing or maybe they're separate branches of the same thing, but what's the character of a union like this?
Oh.
Is it, is it like power couple? Like everybody's like a power couple, you know how
Right.
like if they're both firing on all cylinders. Is that what it is? Or is it like they're very, they're wise, right? So maybe they're pretty reserved and astute. They're not silly or something. Swedenborg says the core elements of the nature of this union, what the relationship is like, innocence and playfulness.
Whoa.
Innocence and playfulness in the
Not
heavenly
what
marriage.
you think.
This is from Heaven and Hell 382. Genuine marriage love is found in the inmost heaven because the angels there are absorbed in the marriage of the good and the true and are in innocence as well. Angels of lower heavens are in marriage love too, but only to the extent that they are in innocence. Because seen in its own right, marriage love is a state of innocence.
Wow. He made a pretty bold statement there that the genuine article is really, in a way, only on that highest level. They've got it in a way that you could call genuine.
Yeah.
And then other ones, yes, they have it, but it depends on how much innocence you
have to, if the recipe is more innocence you add, the more it becomes genuine, or without that, it can't be.
And I can imagine people who would think, well, there's nothing in common. I mean, innocence would be like being a child where you're not even aware of those things. You don't even think about something like marriage or
right.
having a relationship with somebody or something like that. Aren't they completely opposites? Or
that's true.
It's interesting to.
Well, so we've done whole shows about what innocence is. Like the short answer is, it is what you think it is, meaning like with a kid, sure, like that's different than being a grown-up, but there's just like the vibe of innocence is this like playfulness, spontaneity, silliness, lightheartedness, sincerity. There's something in Swedenborg will talk about
kind
it.
of openness, I would say.
Yeah.
Right?
Swedenborg says, he'll say that the innocence of children is not real innocence.
It's not true innocence.
But what he means by that is it's not voluntary. It's just how you are. And you're not fully developed yet. But there's an innocence, he calls it the innocence of wisdom, which is when you're a grown-up and you already seen life and you can make choices, but yet you take on elements of this innocence.
Some of that quality.
But he'll say you can see shades of what real innocence is in the way that kids are. Just like there's just something about them that you just, that's innocence.
It's great to have that model there, because without that,
yeah,
we might not know what it looked like.
Oh, it's like that is like, well, the internet, like how many videos are about like this little kid, can you believe they said this thing? Like that's so hilarious. Or they did that. That's hilarious.
Right.
But also he defines innocence as a willingness to be led by the divine, or and an acknowledgement that you're led by the divine. So innocence is also the absence of ego or the pride of your own intelligence.
Right. Like a really hard driving self-control, not in the sense of like minding your own behavior, but really like I'm charting my life. This is where I'm going. I'm going to do it. I'm going to run over everybody in my path.
Yeah.
As opposed to sort of like, that was lucky, or that worked out, or,
Yeah.
And the next thing happens, like, no, I'll be available to that. Sure, I'll help with that. And I don't know, there's a different quality in there, I think, that innocence is.
Yeah. Innocence is also, I've heard like celebrities, comedians talk about their kids, and that their kids don't care at all that their parent is famous.
That's right.
A total disregard for that. They still think like absolutely nonplussed by that.
It means nothing to them.
Because I think that innocence too is not really fascinated by the things that our love of eminence and love of the world and love of possessions are.
Right.
The things that sort of the evil in us venerates those things, like
Right.
and craves them, craves to stand out above people. And innocence doesn't
Having
care
a
about
position or a title, or so you're the deputy director of something like that.
yeah, but innocence doesn't care about that.
They don't care
It's
about
just like, I gotta go smell those flowers. I was just looking at a video of my daughter when she was younger. Like, I gotta go smell those daffodils. Like that's what they care about, or like there's something like that. So innocence, and also like there has to be some of that, because the process of, again, voluntarily acknowledging that everything that you puff yourself up about, like the intelligence that you have, skills that you have, anything good about your parents or something, that those come from God. And even the credit for the trajectory that your life is on, all that comes
Right.
from God. There's this, you're not going to want to hear that unless you have a sort of humble innocence, right?
Feeling lucky, feeling blessed. That's right.
Like you have a special interest group in your mind that's like, wait a second, I've built up quite a lot of the fire that I warm my hands around is, look at how exemplary I am in whatever way, more so than other people.
Right.
That's like the thing that keeps me warm, and I need it. So if I start to hear, for example, Swedenborg saying that, like, no, God is the good one. Even your own skills and thoughts and feelings, those come to you from heaven. There's going to be a resistance to that. Like, no, because I'm a lobbyist. This is my industry will be harmed by that knowledge. But innocence is like, okay, that's great. Because when you think about a kid, it's like, yeah, my parents are awesome. And like yeah, of course they're great at everything. That's the kind of the way you get with the Lord. You're not aware of your own reputation, you know?
Yeah. For some reason, I'm getting this mental image of this experience I had where I went to pick up a person. I think she was in her early 80s from the train. And she was in a great mood, even though the train had been stuck on the tracks for hours. You know, it's been like an 11-hour train journey or something. And I'm picking her up, and she just she cheerfully gets off the train and gets in somebody else's car, a total stranger's car, and then, oh, sorry, laughs, comes over to my car, gets in the car, and we drive away. But there's something childlike about it, you know, like she wasn't all, I'm an idiot, you know. She didn't sort of self-immolate over this mistake that she made. She just sort of, isn't that funny? I just got in the wrong car.
And I think that's why we age, is that it's meant to be sort of an on-ramp to shedding your pride, because we start to lose.
It's humbling, yeah.
And you start to learn to laugh at yourself a little bit more.
Yeah.
You can even see it. Like you'll see, like I'll watch shows that like ex-professional athletes are in, and they, you know, as their bodies start to fall apart and they can't do what they used to do, their like competitiveness and that softens. They start to laugh at themselves and how they were. I don't know. I think it's part of the divine plan to have us escape from that trap.
Yeah, because that softness allows the Lord to flow in, and allows things to happen that you might miss if you were just doing your 5-year strategic plan or something.
Right. So this goes on. So between partners who are in marriage love, there are heavenly pleasures, almost like games of innocence to their minds, like those of babies, because there is nothing that does not delight them.
That's a really cool image. It just makes me think of people who are playing and laughing together. You know what I mean? Like it's lighthearted.
Yeah.
There's anxiety, depression, things like that are very serious.
Yeah.
You know, and like panic about what's going on in life or whatever it is. And if you can just kind of laugh and have a hilarious time or something like that, it's great. You think of that as being the least important quality, like, oh, you're just being silly, you know, like grow up or something. But that's, to the Lord, it's a very important quality that he can flow right into and give you a lot of fun and like you're laughing, and it's hard to be anxious when you're kind of giggling and just having a lighthearted time.
Heaven flows into the smallest details of their lives with its joy. In a word, heaven portrays itself in marriage love because heaven for angels is the union of the good and the true, and it is this union that constitutes marriage love.
You would really think that the union of goodness and truth would be, I think I probably hold it too seriously. I like to think about, okay, this is a serious thing you really have to understand, and then you've got to be compassionate and to be a good person and all that. And I'm sure angels take all that very seriously. But it's interesting that there's a component of playful, not just innocence, but playfulness. Those two things.
Well, if marriage in heaven is a core part of the experience of being in heaven, what does Jesus say about what kind of person you have to be like to come into the kingdom of heaven?
Yeah.
Unless you become
he says
like
you
this
have to
little
be serious
child.
as a heart attack.
Yeah.
Right. And
powerful.
Have your act together.
Yeah. Unless you become as this little child, you can't do the kingdom of heaven thing.
That's right.
So let's talk about how to find your soulmate in heaven. We said at the beginning.
That would be a handy thing to just throw out there at the end.
But people might be interested in that. How many people who are looking for true love find true love? 100%.
100%. Eventually.
According to Swedenborg.
That's right.
But he'll say that it may not happen for you in this life.
Yeah, that's right.
Or you may not be sure in this life if the relationship you have or relationships you've had is this person your soulmate or one of these people your soulmate. However, in heaven, that gets sorted out because either if you haven't met anyone, you meet them, or if you have met someone, you get clarity on that. So
Swedenborg really talks about that. That's a big deal because if this is kind of foundational to heaven, then this is high on the priority list of like we need to take care of this.
Someone's got to be on that. If this is like the ticket, everyone better check and make sure that there's an easy way to buy your ticket. I don't know. At this point, we're buried so deep in metaphors. I don't know if we're going to be able to make it out of this one. This is from Heaven and Hell 383. I have been allowed to see how marriages are entered into in the heavens. Throughout heaven, people who are similar gather together, and people who are dissimilar part company.
Now, wait a second. I have a problem with that.
Good.
Opposites attract. It is very well known that opposites attract. People who are alike are not the least bit interested in each other. It's the one who's, it's the wild, carefree one and the nerd who's always paying attention to details. No reference to myself or anything in this.
As I think Nate Bargatze said, in every marriage, there has to be somebody who is a dreamer and is just like, you know what, who cares? Money's not real, let's do it. And somebody who hates fun. If you have two dreamers, you're going to be broken to death.
You're going to be a problem. That's right.
I'm not going to pretend I said that as well as he said it, but
Yeah, there's something to that. And yet, what Swedenborg is saying is kind of the opposite because of that geography thing we were talking about before, that you're drawn to people who love the same thing. And a lot of what people mean by opposite is not like, oh, I'm a shining angel and there's some horrible murderous devil.
Yeah.
I'm so attracted to that. No.
Yeah. And I'm a horrible murderous devil. What I really like is that fun, loving person.
Innocent angel who radiates the goodness of God and makes me look horrible by comparison or something. No. You're drawn by a likeness. There's still obviously differences between people or whatever, but there's a commonality at the level of purpose and values, I think, and love. He talked about heavenly love earlier. There's something that bonds them together.
Well, so people throughout heaven, people who are similar gather together, and people who are dissimilar part company. But what is it to be similar, and what is it to be dissimilar? We talked before about how he talks about these soulmate relationships and says it's like the heart and the lungs. If you were to say to someone, can you draw me two things that are very similar? And somebody drew a detailed picture of the human heart and then a detailed picture of the lungs, you would say, can I have my money back? Or
Right.
you fail this class, or
Right.
whatever the assignment was. Those
Yeah.
things are very different, yet
Very different.
different in characteristics. It doesn't mean that, I think what you're saying, as you can be very different in terms of, oh yeah, one of you is like spontaneous and one of you is more careful and deliberate. That's not what it's talking about.
No.
What it's talking about is the similarity in the deep desire to do good, and similarity in the principles that guide your life. And that's what heavenly communities are based on. It's not that everybody in that community has the same personality.
I picture the heart saying, well, number one, I want this body to do well. I want it to be alive. I want it to thrive.
Yes, that's right.
That's important to me. And not only my part, the heart part. I want all the parts, right down to the toes. I want everything to thrive.
Yeah.
And the lungs would say, I'm with you 100%. That's what I want to.
That is a great analogy, because yes, if you got the lungs and the heart into a conversation, is it what are we here to do? The body needs to be healthy. But then how do we do it? Well, I think that we got to breathe in oxygen. That's what it's all about. No, you got to pump.
No,
You got to pump.
I don't want any air in here.
Yeah.
I'm all valves. And,
Yeah.
you know.
However, so opposites attract, because you need those two opposites to do everything that needs to be done in order for the body to do what it wants to do. So I love also how Swedenborg, he's going to talk about how people enter into marriage in heaven.
Okay, right.
But to do that, he first gives a general universal principle, which is throughout heaven, whether this is, your married partner or just your neighbor or whatever, people who are similar gather together and people who are dissimilar part company.
Yeah.
And that's actually across the entire spiritual world. That's why there is heaven and hell.
Yeah.
Heaven and hell is a self-selection process where everyone who's similar because they love what's good and true wants to go near each other, so they create heaven.
It's not imposed on you. Yeah.
Everyone who loves what's evil and false wants to go near each other, so that creates hell. That's a universal, that's E equals MC squared. Like are drawn toward like, not by their own will, but by the Lord. In the same way, spouse is drawn toward spouse when their minds can be united into one.
Can be. That's interesting.
So
Can
you're
be.
ready, when you've gotten to the point, both of you've gotten to a point in their lives where it can happen.
And they're such that they are compatible or whatever you'd
They're
want to
made
call
for
it.
each other. Yeah. So at first sight, they love each other most deeply, see each other as married partners, and enter into their marriage. This is why all of heaven's marriages are the work of the Lord alone. They also hold a feast and celebration with many people gathered. These feasts differ from community to community. Again, because similar people are together. So people are going to have a character and they have a different celebration.
And I know some people in this world that love at first sight is something that people talk about,
Yeah.
Love at first sight, and there are stories of this kind. But I still think it's a little different in the other. When he says marriages are different, that's what he led with. It's different. When your essence, and it shows in everything about you. Your face reflects that essence. Your body reflects that essence. Everything about you reflects who you are. Somebody can see that.
Yeah.
Then it's like you know right away. It's not this whole process of, well, I'm an unformed lump of coal, but maybe someday I'll turn into a diamond that could be loved.
A fixer-upper.
Right? High maintenance, but eventually worth it.
Yeah. So
this is, it's kind of different conditions that you're talking about where this happens and is brought together. And then it's more of a I think that's what he meant when he said there aren't really weddings in the same way, because it's just everybody would recognize, duh. I mean, look at that. Of course. So there's not matchmakers in the same way, I don't gather. It's like, it's just obvious. The Lord did that.
It's like a fairy tale.
Yeah.
That's probably where we get inspiration for it. And so this can play out, and this can be, it might be somebody that you spent your whole life married to in the world, and you just have this moment there where you're like, oh yeah, this is great.
This is
it. Or it can be that you never found somebody, and there somebody just clicks. But the point is, God's not leaving anybody out who wants to participate in it. It's going to happen, and there's like a lot of resources, divine resources, put toward making sure it happens. So you don't have to really do anything. You don't have to. It doesn't seem like you have to try hard. It's gonna happen because that's the intent.
The thing is just to work on yourself, I think, in that sense of repentance, of removing the stuff that gets in the way, so that love will flow in. And
marriage in heaven, like that's there. It's important. It's like absolutely, angelic life is more similar to our life here than you might think. We're not wasting our time building up the skills on how to love people and how to live with people.
Being in relationship and so on.
It's not like, that was all for nothing, because now we neither marry nor are given marriage, and it's just this different thing where I don't even know why we did all that. This is the groundwork. This is the point in which we make ourselves from lump of coal into something that God can give everything that he wants to give us. That's why you have to go through life. That's what makes it worth it, is it's all laying groundwork. It's all laying groundwork, even though you feel like, why am I going through this? Why did this happen? Why did that happen? It's laying the groundwork so that you can accept that heaven into yourself.
And how would you know that if Swedenborg or somebody hadn't gone over there and come back to tell us, How would we know that? What would make you think that was so fundamental in heaven? So it's great that's been shared with the world.
And I can't pop in there and look and see, like, is this really how it goes? I don't.
Haven't been. Don't know.
What I will say is, look at what does it do to the quality of your life, and let's say the quality of your relationships, to if you let this idea live in you, and you say, all right, so I've got, if I'm working on a marriage with someone right now, this thing could go all the way. Like, we could be doing this forever.
Absolutely.
How do I think about that? Like, we're on this, we're improving this thing, and this is going to continue. How does that affect the quality of your marriage? Or if you don't have a relationship, but you're thinking, all right, I'm preparing myself because this is my destiny to get in. How does that affect your loneliness or your drive in life? Like, what does it do? What are the fruits that idea bears?
That's the thing to look at.
Does it make you a better member of society? Does it give hope and comfort to you? Does it urge you to live a good life? Does it make you happier? What does it do? I don't know. For me, it's good. Check it out for yourself. And that's I think with these things of the Spirit that we have. Sure, you have to take some of it on, I guess, what they would call faith, or you have a trust in it. The best you can do for some things is you investigate the impact of the idea. Is the idea just and fair and everything?
Yeah.
But what does it do in a human life? If we were built to accept the truth and built to accept love, and that those things are deeply compatible with what it is to be a human being. So see, what does this idea do to your human existence? And then that's the smell test. You can see whether it's something you want to keep around and act on.
That's right.
Thanks for hanging out. Super fun as always. Thank you everyone for watching. I can't believe that you all watched this all the way to the end. You're still watching, even during the wrap up. You didn't click away when you heard I was starting to wrap it up. If you want more, we're about to go right now and shoot this like after video where we talk everything we didn't say here that we thought of and that came up.
That's true.
We're gonna give it to members. So if you want to become a member, just click that little join button that's right there, and it's for a very modest fee. We're not for profit. We need to have some way in which to sustain these efforts. That's the way you can do it and get extra fun little content for yourself. Think about it. Thanks, man. That was super fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for watching.